So, thanks for dealing with all the fun weather and everything today. It seems that every week it's a monsoon on my meetup, so thank you for that. Also, too, big thanks to both of my backup speakers who were willing to pull it through within a couple hours today. Completely unfortunate events happened, and I hope both of them feel better. And one of them will give us a talk in August, so you won't miss out on any metal 3D stuff when he gives his talk in August. But I'm pretty excited for my two talks today. So a couple of things that are happening. Well, it's happening right now, but Code for Orlando's meetup is sadly on the same day as my iOS meetup. But it's good to intermix in between the two. They do a bunch of different apps and website stuff to make things better for the city of Orlando. And anything else you want to throw in really quickly on Code Orlando?
Yeah, you should have gone there tonight instead of this. I should be there too, so. Shame on all of you.
The Android guy talking over here.
Is that a weekly thing?
No, it's once a month. There's Code for Orlando, and we do hackathons, which are the thing that you really, really want to go to. The city's there.
Is it always on Tuesdays? Or?
The hackathon, there's 2 of them a year, at least.
What happened on a month or so?
Or on Saturday.
Yeah, usually it's on Saturdays. But the meetup is every first Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, first Tuesday. So.
Yep. Gives you some options to go to. And then next week is Orlando Tech Meetup, which is on Thursday. That's still at the Church Street Exchange. I don't know if they were able to fill the slots or not, but they are looking for people to demo products, things that they've worked on. So if you want to demo something, you can totally reach out to me. I can also ask Orette as well if he's still looking for any companies. And then we've kicked it back off again. I know the first place we're going to is Eola Wine and Company, but the Orlando Tech Pub Crawl has started back up again on Fridays. So it's always the Friday after Orlando Tech Meetup. So it's the 3rd Friday of every month. And so we've kicked it back off again. We didn't do it last month. It was a little bit funky over the summer, but it's back. And that starts at 5 o'clock. We go to 3 different bars, so you're usually done by like 7. So we go to different places, different districts in all of Orlando, and then a bunch of people in the Orlando Tech community all go and hang out. We've had like 40 or 50 people all come out at one point in time. It was pretty fun. And then sometimes we go out after because we're crazy like that. So, and then I got all the announcements today. I know some of you guys probably did too. Startup Weekend is back up and going. That is July 31st through August 2nd. So there's no theme this year, or at least for this particular one. It's just you want to get together with a team and get a startup going. There you go. So that's, if you just look up, I think they posted a whole bunch through the Orlando Tech Facebook group page, and you can also just pull up startupweekend.org and then find Orlando to register for all of that. And I think that's it for events as of right now that I know of, outside of my own meetup, that anybody's reached out to me to communicate, unless you know of any. Do you know of anything I should communicate about? Okay. So other than that, there's something else I was going to talk about. Oh, for those who have not been here before, I know I see some new faces, which makes me happy. We do take everybody for the first round of beer at World of Beer right after. So once the talks are all done, hooray, we're going to go get beer. And I'll hang out and network. You definitely want to hang out for all of it. And another side note, too, if you are, granted, we may not always be hiring, but if you are looking to be hired within our company, you come to me for the initial convo, and then we roll from there. So at least that way we can get you on a list. We might interview you at some point. Who knows? But if you are looking and you are curious and you want to learn more about CloudSpace and how working for CloudSpace might be a good fit for you, definitely let me know and I'll give you my card and then we can roll from there. That's why I asked for your GitHub info when you sign it. All right, so with that being said, Eric, would you like to get up and talk?
Sure.
Yay! Eric gave a talk a couple months ago when I was As my dog decides to congratulate you as well.
Woo.
I was deathly sick when Eric decided to give his first talk here, so I'm excited that he was able to come through at 3 o'clock this afternoon with, hey, I can give a talk. All right, you are good to go.
Awesome. Taught high school for 20 years. So when she said last minute need somebody, it's like, oh, I can just throw together something real quick, which is what I used to do all the time. It's like, all right, no problem. So I had written a blog on Swift and Objective-C interoperability last July when Swift was first really brand new. So I kind of grabbed some of this information from that blog that I had written last year. And I've got a sample project here as well from what I've done. I work for CapTech Consulting. It's a great firm to work for. We've got 4 major offices, and then we also have a national team. I know we're hiring on our national team, so developers interested in working for a really great company. I passed out information from my last talk. I have that information again if anybody's interested in finding out more about CapTech. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is Objective-C and Swift. So everybody used to write Objective-C if you're going to be writing in for the iPhone. And then last year, Apple came out with their own language, because no other language can be as cool as what Apple can make. So we decided to come up with Swift. And Swift has some real nice advantages to it, mostly being that it is much safer than Objective-C is. So your code is less likely to crash. Your code is less likely to have bugs in it. The first full feature that I wrote in Swift only came back with almost no bugs in it, and I was really excited about that. And of course, so was my project manager. And a big part of that is because Swift kind of forced things to happen to make sure that things were going to be a little cleaner as they come along. So if you have an Objective-C project and you're thinking, oh, maybe I should try putting some Swift in here, it's really easy to do. So I'm going to show you kind of the steps on how to do that tonight. If you're going to build a project brand new, you may want to be thinking about just going straight with Swift. But a lot of people have projects already and they want to continue to maintain them. And you want to continue to maintain them, you may want to bring Swift in there. I'm thinking that Apple, there's still debate about this, but Apple may in a couple of years just say, we're only going to accept Swift. I don't know how long that's going to be, but I can see that happening. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is typically you have your Objective-C project already, and you want to bring Swift in. So the first time you create your brand new Swift file, your Xcode is going to ask you the question, hey, you want to create a bridging header? You want to answer yes. So I'll show you how easy this is. So I created a most boring Objective-C project called temp, and I'm going to add a new file to it. And I'm going to add a Swift file, and I'm going to call that temp as well, because I'm coming up with such cool names. And here it's going to ask me, would you like to configure an Objective-C bridging header? It's that easy. All you have to do is say, yes, create a bridging header for me, and it's going to create it for you. It's much more difficult to try to do this afterwards. So it's much easier when the very first time it asks you that question, just say yes, and it pops that guy right in there for you. So you see I've grabbed my bridging header right here. Bridging header doesn't have anything in it when it first makes it. It's just a .h file. But it tells Xcode that these are the Objective-C classes that you want to pull into Swift. So anything that you want to write in Swift that refers back to your Objective-C, you want to put your .header files in this file. And it's just import whatever file that you want, just like you would import anywhere else. I just said that. Is that the same thing? There we go. So a newly created Swift file is going to create an import for Foundation. It's the only import that it's going to have when you first make the Swift file. So you may want, that's going to create things like NSObject, NSArray, those types of things. You may want to add UI kit. So if you want a UI view in there, UI view controller, you want to import that as well. Or you can import other statements. But your Swift files don't need imports for other Swift files. One of the really nice things about Swift, you don't have to have those tons of statements of import this and this and this and this and this. Because if it's in Swift, the Swift is already going to bring it in. And you don't need to import anything from Objective-C either in your Swift files. you just put it in that, that bridging header one time, and then your Swift is going to be able to see those classes from any Swift file. And when you make your Swift file, usually you extend a file. You know, I'm going to extend a UI view controller. I'm going to extend this. If you don't extend anything, what you have is you have a pure Swift file. And a pure Swift file isn't going to be able to be seen very well from Objective-C. So typically, you're going to want to extend something, at least extend NSObject if nothing else. And by doing that, you've now created an extension of an Objective-C class. And so because it's been derived from Objective-C, you can do something as simple as what I have down here. I made an ES-timer class in Swift, which you'll see later. And in my Objective-C class, I can just call it just like this. ES-timer equals ES-timer alloc init, or ES-timer new. It's a shortcut to that. The add Objective-C attribute tells a Swift file that it should be visible to Objective-C when it goes back. Now you can do that to a class, and if you do it to a class, it's going to automatically make all the properties and all the methods all add Objective-C as well. Or you could just specify certain things. I could specify certain properties. I could specify certain methods. You'll see that I extend a Objective-C to a protocol in the sample that I have here, so that that can be seen as well. Then there's the generated header. Where is that generated header? Some of you who've done this aren't sure exactly where that generated header is either. Good luck finding it, because it's not actually a class that's written anywhere. If you look in Finder and try and go find that generated header, you're not going to find it. So it's created automatically within Xcode, and you can see it, and I'll show you how to see it later, but it actually is really interesting because it takes all of your Swift files and it converts them over into Objective-C headers. So you've got all your method signatures in there from what you see in Swift, but it's written in Objective-C as the header file. From your Objective-C class, if you want to bring in your Swift files, so this is going the other direction. I've written some Swift files, and now I want to be able to see those in Objective-C. So you're going to bring in one import, and just one import. You don't need to bring in every single class. You just need to bring in one import, and it's going to be project name, whatever the full project name is, dash swift.h, and just import it. Like the project I'm going to show you here as an example is called Color Matcher. So I just import color matcher dash swift.h, and that brings in everything so I can see any of the classes that I had written in Swift inside of here. There are some exceptions to that. I'll bring that up in a second. There they are, limitations. So I added an extra S. If your Swift code that's where the S is supposed to go. Yes. I just created this afternoon. If you have tuples in there, your Objective-C doesn't know what a tuple is. So if you have a tuple in there, you won't be able to see that in your Objective-C. Your generated enums and structs, as of Swift 1.1, definitely not. I watched the video for 2015. I'm not sure about the enums and structs. I know, and I added that down there at the bottom, that generics now are available in Objective-C, and they weren't before. So as of Swift 2.0, they can be. So I haven't actually played around with that yet, but they've started to do some extra things and go into the 2015 because it's really more advanced stuff that you don't really need to know right yet, as far as, you want to set your project up and be able to go back and forth between Objective-C and Swift first, and then you can take a look at some of those other things, more advanced things. Then you've got your bridging data types. So in Objective-C, you've got types, string. You jump over to Swift, and when it brings it over, it's going to bring it over as a string, not as an NS string. You can still use NS strings in Swift, but when you bridge them over, it's going to bring them automatically over as a string. And then you're going to do things like, you're going to have to bridge that cast. So I've got a text field.text, and it's going to say as string. Now this isn't as difficult as what you need, because if you actually put text field.text in there, and it shows up as red like you got a compile error, there are some very nice hints that we'll give to you, and some automatic fixes, because it'll use this one a few times, and it'll just say add as string. I'm like, okay. And there you go. So that helps you with the bridging headers. So all your numeric types, int, unsigned int, the float, the double, the bool, all that stuff are converted to NS number. NS array comes back as any object array. So those kind of things are bridged over, and sometimes you have to do some casting as we're coming in there. And then you also have to worry about things that might be nil, because there are things that aren't considered, should not be nil in Swift. It's one of the things, the type safety that it has in Swift. So when you bring things over, you have to bring them over as unwrapped optionals, putting the question mark in there in Swift, because you don't know if it's coming over from Objective-C whether or not it's nil or not. So you have to check for that first. Okay, so let's go take a look at our demo. So here's my color matcher demo. And one of the newer things that wasn't in there in 1.1, but is now in the newer version of Xcode, is in your build settings under put this in the right place. Sorry, I thought I had this earlier today. Under packaging, there is a define module, and that define module needs to be set as yes. So if you have that set as no, you're going to get a bunch of compile errors with your Swift code. It won't be able to see it. So that's a really simple fix. I didn't put that in my presentation. But jumping from Swift 1.1 or different versions of Xcode, the newest version of Xcode that's out there, going to make sure you add that in there.
Is that automatic for new projects?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that I took this project that I made last year, which didn't automatically have it in there, and it was working with it no last year. And so I tried to run it today, and it was giving me compile errors. I changed that to a yes, and I was good to go. Okay, so here's my bridging header. So you'll see that I have a viewController.h. Can you see that well enough? I've got a viewController.h and a countdownView.h in here. And so I'm going to bring those into my bridging header. And so that my ES timer, which is my only Swift class that I have in here, is going to be able to see that file okay. So I put a foundation in here. I put UIKit. I extended NSObject. And so that made it to be a Objective-C type of class. I didn't really need to define it in there. However, my protocol, I put that at Objective-C in there so that my protocol can also be seen from an Objective-C class. This enum, this current timer state, can't actually be pulled back into Objective-C though. So I actually had to find different ways to figure out how to get that enum and then make that public in a different way so that I could get that back over to my other classes. One of the more interesting things that you'll see in here is this import color matcher swift.h. So here's my project name -swift.h. And if I do a command click on there, we'll actually see this generated file. So I didn't write any of this stuff. It's automatically created for you. And you'll see as I slide down here that here's my ES timer class that I wrote in Swift. But here's all the properties and the methods, the ones that are public, and they're all written in Objective-C. So this is how I would call those from Objective-C, and it's right in here. And then here's also my protocol, which is the protocol that I wrote in Swift, which can be seen in Objective-C. So you can also write protocols in Objective-C, call them from Swift. You can make a Swift protocol from your Objective-C class as well. So that's the project. This entire project is on GitHub. So let's share that on here. So that's my email. And then if you want to see that project, which has both Swift and Objective-C in it, it's a rather simple project. It has a little color swatch, and it has 3 sliders, and you try and slide the RGB values to match them. not that exciting, but it does what it does. So that's all I have. It's really that easy to be able to bring them back and forth between each other, and then it's just kind of practice. You know, as you're working along, you're going to things like, okay, that changed it over to an array of any object instead of using this instead. But if you've got an Objective-C project, I would say, hey, go throw a couple Swift files in there and see if you can get them to go back and forth with each other. Any questions? Yes?
What kind of blocking problems have you had?
With blocks?
You know, like blocking, like you just couldn't get around or you step back and do something differently. Because I know you mentioned like tuples don't work, enums don't work, so is there anything else that you found to be difficult to do?
The biggest challenge that we had in our client project is we had set up a project that had several projects within one workspace. And we weren't able to transfer Swift to Objective-C in between those different projects within the workspace. And so we had to go change a bunch of our project settings to do that. But I don't think that's going to affect most people because most people don't have numerous projects within one workspace.
So like libraries and things like that,
there's a different way to do libraries. There's a different type of import statement for some libraries, which is a little bit different than what we had. Some third-party stuff. So I didn't show that here. It's actually in the official blog that I had written about this same kind of material. Cool. Anybody else?
Just the Android guy, really?
Everybody's quiet today.
All right. Well, Josh is going to come up, and he's got some cool stuff to show you, too.
All right, and also, too, while that's happening, I was really bad and forgot to do that. It was horrible. And it's actually funny enough, because, you know, all these talks that we're supposed to have were not Objective-C, and I have the Objective-C book. And yet now, tonight, changed, and it's all Objective-C and Swift talk, so the book just actually matches up with the meetup this time. That doesn't always happen. So.
Thank you.
There you go. And then just click the audio on you. And you're good to go. Some people get a little handsy with their tickets because they think theirs is the lucky number.
Maybe I got the lucky number now.
Hey, you just might have. Although my randomizer does not allow cheating, so you have to differ on that.
I don't know about that. It hasn't been peer reviewed.
How random is your randomizer?
Nobody knows. It's not open source.
It's not open source yet. I'm so scared to make that thing open source. Oh my goodness.
Is this the wire?
So it's 18 minutes. Huh?
I have access to it.
He does. This is the one who. Go ahead, and make it open.
Please.
Do it.
Is this the wire right here?
That's the mini one, but you also have an
Okay.
HDMI port right here.
I do. Where's the HDMI then? Oh, got it. Cool. Awesome. Thanks.
It's okay. You guys have missed out on me trolling myself on YouTube. So, where I plug my laptop in and YouTube's still going and I start arguing with myself through the speaker of the webcam and YouTube, it was great. And it's all on YouTube. So.
All right. So are we good to go, I guess?
Yeah, you were good here. You can
Cool.
intro and everything.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joshua Schroyer. I am an instructor over at Full Sail University. I teach iOS stuff and have been teaching that since December of this past year. So, hello. This is kind of very last minute. I don't have any slides for you. I'm sorry about that. But what I am going to talk to you guys about today is Swifty JSON, if anybody's ever heard of that. If not, then cool, maybe you'll get to learn something. Generally in the context of iOS development, sometimes you'll want to pull some data from an API. pull that information and then display it somehow, maybe in a table view or something to that effect. Mine is just going to be super simple. So I'm just going to be pulling from the Reddit API and just kind of list out in a text view the article names, just to kind of show you how to pull information both built-in and using SwiftlyJSON. So I'm going to start off built-in, what Apple has for you, and then show you the third-party SwiftlyJSON code file to kind of make that a little bit cleaner. So in my view controller class, I have an outlet for that text view so I can update its information. And what I go ahead and do is I use an NSURL session to pull information from the Reddit API. Okay. So in my completion handler, I'm getting the data and the response back. All I'm doing right now is just checking to see if there was an error. And if there wasn't, it's going to go ahead and use the built-in parse. I haven't actually started doing anything with that yet, but it takes the data and passes it along to this function. So, yeah, just running it right off the bat. Just make sure that there's no errors. Okay, cool. There's no error logs popping up. Things are seemingly fine right now. So in here, in my built-in parse, with Apple, what they ask for you to do is you use this NSJSON serialization object. And you use this class method, JSON object with data. When you call JSON object with data, it expects a few things. It wants, well, the data that you just pulled, the JSON data. So that's what I'm providing it, the NS data object. And the options, there are variable options that you can add to it. There are like 3 different ones. I want my containers to be mutable, so I could potentially change the data that I received. And I'm passing in my error, an NS error optional. So if there was an error, it's going to fill out that data and let me know. So that's all I have right now. So I'm going to go ahead and start grabbing the information. I'm going to show you the API first. It's kind of hard to see, probably. Let me zoom in. Cool. So this is the Reddit API. It starts off with this curly brace. If you aren't familiar with the JSON information, curly braces generally denote it's a dictionary. It's a dictionary of information, so a key value pairing. As we see here, I've got my key kind and my pair listing, as well as data being the key here and has a dictionary as its value. And it has 2 key value pairs. Oh, awesome. Hold on 1 second. No, that's good. Let me just reload the page real quick. There we go. That's better. All right. So, come on. Thank you. Weird. Okay. So my data is what I actually care about. What I care about is in my data of the root object is a dictionary which has children. So these would be my articles in the Reddit API. And that is an array. The square bracket denotes that it's an array. So it's an array of dictionary objects. So scrolling down into each of these children, so each child is a dictionary of information. So this article has a ton of information. The one that I'm actually going to be displaying in the text view is, where is it? Did I pass it? Did not pass it. Oh, wait, yes, I did pass it. Oh. I'm just going to use the permalink. I'll just use that, the permalink, and then that's what I use. Or no, title. There we go. That's better, title. My cursor seems to be a little off, but that's okay. So I'm going to use title as the article information. I'm going to display that for each of the children articles in this API. So let me go back here to Xcode and actually do the code. Is this big enough, or do you want me to make it larger? Is it good? Okay, cool. Cool. So remember that root object was a dictionary, so I need to grab that information. So I serialize this, and it returns to you an object as an NS object. Or yeah, so it returns as an NS object, or any object, optional, because it may or may not have serialized that correctly. So assuming it did, assuming that there is no error, I'm going to use optional binding. So I'm going to say if let JSON equals response as, and I'm going to typecast it as a dictionary of information because I want to double check, make sure that my root object is actually a dictionary. So the keys, this is kind of going with Eric's and the interoperability between Objective-C and Swift. So in Objective-C, it would be an NS dictionary. In Swift, the same version is this. It's an NS object for the key and an any object as the value. That's the same thing as an NS dictionary, just the Swift version of it. So if this succeeds, if I get that JSON object as a dictionary of information, I can start drilling down further. So what I really need to know is back here. So I have this JSON object right now. I need to index into it at data, then index into it at children, then for each of my children, because it's an array of information, index into their title property, and then add that to some string variable, update my text view when I'm completed. So built in, it looks something like this. I've double checked, make sure that that is a dictionary, and now need to go into the data. So if let data equals, so I'm just going to continue using optional binding. So yes, if let data equals, I want JSON sub data. And I need to double check to make sure that that is actually another dictionary of information. Sorry, data, it is a dictionary. Now I'll do the same thing for the children, but check to make sure that it is an array of information, not a dictionary, because that's what this holds. So if let children,
Hey Josh,
yes.
one of the things that you can do instead of doing if let,
Yes,
put
no.
them after it.
I do know that. I do know that with Swift 1.2, or yeah, Swift 1.2, that is correct. However, actually, sure, let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say data equals JSON. So yeah, as of, thank you, Eric, as of Swift 1.2, you are able to actually comma separate things, so you don't have that disgusting pyramid going down. So let's actually just remove that. So data equals JSON, or not JSON. Yeah, JSON as. So this will happen as if this is successful, it's going to then evaluate this. So it's going to grab the JSON data from my JSON object that was successful. So double check that is an NS object key and any object. Sweet. And we'll do one more because I want the children from that data, which is an array. So children equals data sub children as, double check to see if it is actually convertible to an array of any objects. And just like the interoperability stuff, an NS array in Swift is this. Essentially, it's just an array of any objects, like he had mentioned. All right, so there we go. If I can get to my children, we're good to go. I just now need to loop through each of my children articles and grab their title properties. So let's go ahead and create a temporary string real quick. Set equal to an empty string. And I'm now going to loop through my children. So for child in children. And this is an array of any objects, but it is, each child is actually a dictionary, right? Because remember I said that each child article is a dictionary worth of information. So this could be written a few different ways. One way that's probably going to save me some headache later on is if I just write it here. Instead of checking if it's an array of any objects, I check to see if it's an array of dictionaries. So I'll just go ahead and put that in here. And you can already kind of see that this is looking kind of disgusting and kind of bothersome. But anyway, so for every child in my children, so for each one of these dictionaries in that array of dictionaries, I now have each child article's information. I can grab their title property and update my text view with that. So I'm going to say if let title equals my child properties title value as, make sure that it is convertible to a string. I can now update my temporary string variable. So str plus equals, I'm going to do, let's see, title with a new line character. Now, assuming that all that is done and correct, so after I've looped through all of my children articles, I can now update my text view with that string information and display that to the user. So I actually have created this function. All it's going to do is just update the text view on the main thread because this is running on a separate thread right now. You don't want to do that on not the main thread, so I'll just call this function and pass in my string variable. Cool. Run that, and we should see something. or we'll see nothing. Maybe it wasn't actually called title. Let me double check that. So child, here's my dictionary of information. It's called title.
It's inside of data.
Oh, is it? Good call. Thank you. Inside of data. Wow. Okay, so we have to go one level further. This is amazing. So yes, each child has data, which then the title exists in that. Okay, thank you, Reddit. All right, so if let title. Actually, let me go ahead and show you this real quick because I don't really need the data of the child and then get the title from that. Like, All right, optional chaining. So using optional chaining with this is kind of disgusting. And I just want to show it just so you can see how gross it is, and we'll go from there. So I'm using optional binding and optional chaining with these as exclamation points. So I actually want the data, and I want to double check to make sure that that is a, what was it, a dictionary of information? Yeah, so ns object, any object. All right, so using optional chaining, this could or could not potentially return a valid dictionary. So I need to then check to see if I can index into this. So I'm going to have to wrap it in parentheses, use the question mark so I can index into that, and say I want the title property of that data, and double check to see if that is a string. And you can see that Swift even has a problem with it, like the syntax is looking all kind of weird. So that's great, but it works. Here we go. Hey, there we go. So this is all the article's information that it's grabbing from the API, and this is using the built-in Apple way, right? But I'm actually going to show you now how to do it in Swifty JSON. It's a lot shorter and a lot cleaner, in my opinion. So I'm actually just going to comment that out and replace it with the Swifty JSON parse. And we're going to build that together. Okay, so for this, if you go to Google and you just type in Swifty JSON, the very first hit is this GitHub account for Swifty JSON, and it's got all of the information in here. It's got a great README of information, and they tell you exactly what I had just discussed. So it's got all of this stuff, all of this optional chaining and whatnot. But they make it simpler, right? They essentially create a wrapper for all that disgusting stuff I just did, and it now allows you to just do something like this. If I wanted the username from some JSON information, I could say JSON sub 0 sub user sub name, and it's going to use optional chaining along the way. The entire time, every time I'm doing a subscript, it's going to check each one of them in case it fails. So let's go ahead and write that real quick. I went ahead and downloaded it, so let me just add that to my project now. All right, so I'll open this up. I heard that there was supposed to be somebody else doing like Cocoa Pods today, so that's why I'm not talking about that at all. It's just
that originally was one of the talks that was sick.
Got it. Okay. So anyway, I'm not going to do CocoaPod integration. I'm just going to show how to just drag and drop a file. So I'm going to take the Swifty JSON Swift file and drop it into my project. So let me bring my project back up and drag that over here. By the way, when this drops down, generally make sure that you check this, copy items if needed. Otherwise, you're just referencing that file location path. This will actually copy that file into your project, has its own version. All right, cool. So now it's here, it exists, and I can use it. The initializer that I want to use is this. So the struct is called JSON. So you say JSON, you use that initializer right here. You provide the data, the options, just like NSJSON serialization. In fact, the initializer right here uses NSJSON serialization. Like I said, it just wraps up all that information for you and makes it much simpler to use. So here in my view controller class, I'm going to create a JSON object. So I'll say let JSON equal JSON and use the initializer So I'll pass in the data. I'll use dot mutable containers. And I'll even use the error pointer just like I did up here above. So pretty much it's all looking very similar to before. And I'll even do my check against an error. Cool, so that all looks the same. Now I want the same exact information, the title information of all of my articles, but using SwiftlyJSON. It's as simple as this. I would like to say, if let, I would like the children property. So if let children equals, and I'm going to index into my JSON variable that I created at data, then index into that at children. And use the dot syntax and say that I would like to check it against an array of information. So it would just be dot array. So just doing that is exactly the same thing as this part right here. Exactly the same. It just grabs the children array from this information. Now I'd like to loop through, so for child, actually first let me get my variable. So var str string, cool. So for child in my children array, I would now like to get the title property. Super simple also. If let title equals, and I say child sub data sub title as a string. So just dot string. And now I can do the same exact thing as before. So str plus equals, use string interpolation. There we go. And call the same exact method as before. Same stuff, except now it looks a lot cleaner. And it's not as disgusting. And I don't have this crazy highlighting problem. I don't know why that's there, but that's there whenever you try using optional chaining this way. So much shorter, much cleaner. Are there any questions? Yeah, what's up?
So behind the scenes, is that just using like dynamic getters and setters?
Yeah. So if we check this out, it's actually a really big file too. Yeah, there's like almost on the end. Okay, there it is. So there's a lot of line numbers in here, but in here they do a lot of this checking. I mean, you can check it out. Let's see. Yeah, see all these get sets, yeah, whatnot. But it's just a way to kind of put all that ugliness behind closed doors, and you don't have to really worry about it. Any other questions? What's up?
So can you go back to that class a second?
Surely.
So you created a children JSON Swifty object called.
Yes, this is the JSON object. JSON, right? So I constructed a new JSON using SwiftlyJSON, right, and provided the same exact stuff that NSJSON serialization wants.
But it's not a dictionary. It's a
No, this returns it as a JSON object, their own struct of information.
okay, like a SwiftlyJSON.
Yes.
Object. Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
So then you went through and you got a children.
Yep.
And that children itself was a array.
Yes. So what I did, root object. So this is my root object. I indexed into it using the key value pair of data. It returns to me a dictionary, but I don't have to do any of that checking. In fact, it does all that checking for you behind the scenes. Right. So if this were an invalid, let's just say invalid, and I run it again, it's not going to crash because it's just going to check against that for you automatically. Okay, it's doing optional chaining behind the scenes for you. If the subscript fails, there's no problem.
When I'm going down there, so
yes.
I see the original JSON, which is our JSON Swifty file.
Mm-hmm.
Then you jump down and you have this children, which is your array, and you said for each value in children, you wanted a child, and then you did the child as a Swifty JSON as well.
Yes.
How did it know that was a Swifty JSON?
Okay, so .array actually returns an array of JSON objects. They're Swifty JSON objects. So it's their built-in object still.
Okay.
when you say dot array or dot dictionary, it's the same type of idea.
So it keeps it in that same Swifty JSON?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So any other questions? Thank you for the questions. That was good.
Can you access array indices with that? Like, do you want? I'm thinking in JavaScript, but if you want to do like children and then the first item or something.
Yeah, sub-0.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of this for-in loop, I could definitely say, you know, children sub-0.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's still an array. It'll return a JSON object, so you would want to check against like a string or string value if you know for certain it's a string value and not just potentially a string. Okay, so I guess if there are no other questions, that's it. I didn't really think forward about putting this up on anything. I do have a GitHub that I've like pretty much never used. Yeah, so I could maybe put it up there. My GitHub though is, I'll just go ahead and write it down, why
You can
not?
also post it on the meetup page too.
Oh, okay.
In the comment section.
Sure.
You're more than welcome to
I will
that.
do that. Thank you.
Post your slides on there if you would like as well.
Cool.
So you guys save the day for me.
Thank you.
Alright.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So,